Today I recreated 4 MrBeast thumbnails in Gorilla Tag, with each one getting harder and harder. And watch till the end for a surprise. And with that, let's make the first MrBeast thumbnail. First thing I'm gonna do is wear a shirt and make it look orange in Photoshop. And I think this shirt looks pretty nice. And all we gotta do now is just do the posing. And I feel like City would be perfect for this. And now that the post is done, we gotta find a background for this. I think this spot right here is really good, so let's go Photoshop it. And the first thing I'm gonna do is mask out the character. Okay, it's all masked now, so I'm gonna press Ctrl X to delete the background. And now I'm gonna mask out his shirt and make it orange. There you go. Press Ctrl J to duplicate. Now I'm gonna make a new layer, get an orange brush, and just start painting like this. I know it doesn't look good right now, but to fix that, I'm gonna change the mode over here until it looks good. I think that looks pretty nice. And this looks a little bit weird. To fix that, we're gonna do the method we did before. I think that looks pretty good. So now let's add the background. And now all I gotta do is shade the areas. And there we go. Here's the first thumbnail. Let's move on to the next thumbnail. And to make the second thumbnail, we're gonna have to go to B. Now let's do my pose. That was a pretty good pose. Now let's get the water shot. That was a perfect picture. But we gotta take one more picture to make this thumbnail complete. And with that, let's go in Photoshop. And the first thing I'm gonna do is add the water. Second thing I'm gonna do is add the character. And of course, we have to mask him out. And I'm just gonna do that by selecting the tool up here, just drawing over his character. And if you wanna remove areas you don't want, just press Alt and click. Now I'm gonna press Ctrl J to duplicate it and just remove the background. Now there is an error right here, but to fix that, just grab the masking tool up here and just cut it out like this. And now let's add the actual raft like this. And again, I'm gonna select the mask tool and just begin masking the thing like this. Press Ctrl J to duplicate, and of course remove the background afterwards. Then I'm just gonna put the raft under the character. In this thumbnail, he's really far down. The raft is pretty big, so I'm gonna try to replicate that. And I think that looks pretty nice. And then another thing we could do is add a new image and cut out the shark. And there we go. So press Ctrl J to duplicate it and delete the background. But we have a little bit of a problem. As you can see, it doesn't look that great. But to fix that, we're just gonna mask this out. Now that I'm done masking, we're gonna have to fix this by masking around the ring. And now to fix this, we're gonna have to use the remove tool and then just drawing in the mask we just made. That looks pretty good. And now let's make the shark fin. And to do that, we're just gonna have to mask the shape of the shark fin. And I think something like this looks pretty good. And now to make this look like a shark fin, what we wanna do is go to edit, content, and where fill. And then this should pop up. Just press OK. And that looks pretty good. But I'm just gonna duplicate it. And after that, press Ctrl T to make this menu pop up. And click this button right here to flip it. Press done. Now just position it right. And there we go. We fixed the shark. And now we can just copy and paste it all over the place. Now I don't wanna waste your time watching this, so I'm just gonna skip to the next part. And there we go. We're now done. But it looks really weird right now. And to fix that, I'm gonna make some of the sharks more blurry by going to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing with other sharks. But we don't want them all to have the same amount of blur. So the ones that are bigger are gonna have less blur on them. Now all the sharks are pretty much done. But this shirt doesn't really look good right now. But to fix that, we're gonna select the remove tool over here and just draw it like this. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now I am gonna mask out the shirt. It's now all masked, and I'm gonna press Ctrl J to duplicate it. I'm gonna click on here and press Hue Saturation. Then make that a clipping mask by pressing Ctrl Alt G. And now we're gonna change the hue. I think green would look really good. And of course, like in the MrBeast thumbnail, we're gonna add text up there. So to do that, you're gonna go to the top layer, press T. I'm just gonna scale it up a bunch like this. And that's probably it for the text. But now the thumbnail looks pretty bland right now. And that's because there's no shading or anything. So I'm gonna start out by shading all the sharks. And that looks really, really nice. Now let's go on and shade the actual monkey, like under the shirt right here. I'm gonna do the same over here. And I'm of course gonna shade the head as well. And now the actual monkey shaded, but we also gotta shade the shirt. I think that looks pretty good. So now let's shade the actual rat. And I'm gonna do that by selecting the burn tool over here and just shade under the monkey. But this doesn't really look like a rat. We're gonna have to mask it a bit. Something like this looks pretty nice. We don't want to have anything too crazy, but again, there's a lot of sharks around, so it would make sense if it's like really destroyed. And I think that looks really, really good. So now I'm just gonna do some small adjustments to make it look perfect. I think this is the finished thumbnail, but let's move on to the next thumbnail. For the third MrBeast thumbnail, all I have to do is do this. That's literally it. So let's go in Photoshop and make this thumbnail. And the first thing I'm gonna do is add the character like this. And now of course we gotta mask the character. And to do that, we're gonna go up here, press this, and now just start masking it. Once we're done masking, we're gonna press Ctrl J to duplicate the layer and then delete the layer under. And there we go. That looks pretty nice. And now we're just gonna position the monkey. And I think this is pretty good. And now we're gonna have to add the plate behind him. So I think something like this will work perfectly. I'm just gonna line it up like this. And I think something like this looks pretty decent. But the plate behind the character looks really odd right now. And to fix that, we're just gonna shade it. So I'm gonna grab the burn tool over here, just start shading it like this. And I think that looks pretty nice. So now let's add the saw. And I think this one looks pretty good, but there's a few things we gotta fix about it. Let's start out with masking the saw. There we go. Press Ctrl J to duplicate it, remove the background, and now press Ctrl U, bring up hue saturation. Let's put the saturation all the way down. There we go. And I'm gonna duplicate it again by pressing Ctrl J. Then I'm gonna add motion blur up here by going to filter, blur, and motion blur. Put the distance a bit up. That looks pretty nice. And now we're just gonna delete the stuff we don't need from it. And now we're just gonna add a shine. And I think this shine right here looks pretty good. And now we're of course gonna add the background. And I think this background right here looks pretty good, but we just gotta shade it a bit and make it a bit darker as well. There we go. I feel like the shine is a bit too much, so I'm just gonna erase these parts right here. There we go. Looks pretty good. And now the last thing we're gonna do is add the ropes. And I think this rope right here looks pretty good, so now I'm just gonna duplicate it a bunch. And there we go. That looks pretty nice. So I'm just gonna do some finishing touches, and then we should be done. And there you go. Here's the finished thumbnail. Anyways, let's move on to the next thumbnail. And for the last thumbnail, all I have to do again is just do this. And now all I gotta do is go in Photoshop and make this thumbnail. And the first thing I'm gonna do is add the image. And now we're gonna mask the character. Press Ctrl J to duplicate it. I think this looks pretty good. And now all we have to do is do the background. But in order to do the background, we have to go in Blender. And the first thing we're gonna do is add the grass. And to do that, we're gonna press Shift A and then go to Mesh and then click Plane. Now we're gonna size it up a bunch like that. Now we're gonna press Tab, press A, right click, subdivide. And let's subdivide it a few times. There we go. Now click the materials properties down here. Press New, name it Grass. Click this yellow circle right here. Then click Image Texture. Press Open. Now add your texture and it should look something like this. But it looks really weird right now, and I'm gonna show you how to fix that. First, go down here. Instead of it being on linear, make it be closest in order for it to be actually pixelated. Then put IOR all the way down, and then just mess with metallic and roughness. And second thing we're gonna do, we're gonna press Tab, press A, go to UV editing, and scale this up a bunch. And now you can see that the texture is way bigger. Now we're gonna add a camera by clicking Shift A and then Camera. Now click this camera icon up here to go in camera view. Now you gotta press View, Navigation, and Walk Navigation. Now keep being in camera view, click the plane, press Tab, grab the knife tool over here, and now let's form the scenery like this. And now the next thing we're gonna do, and now we're gonna select the faces right here like that. We're gonna press E and move it down. And now we're gonna move it a bit to the right. And now we're gonna select all of these parts right here. And we're gonna press U and Cube Projection. And now we're gonna add a new material by pressing plus over here. And then we're gonna do the exact same thing we did before. And once we're done with that, we're gonna press Assign. And what that's gonna do is gonna change every texture we selected in edit mode. So now let's add the coffin. And I think something like this looks pretty good. So now let's render it and add it to Photoshop. And I think this looks pretty good, but now let's shade the area. So we're gonna select the burn tool over here and just start shading like this. And I think this looks pretty good. So now let's shade the background. But before we do that, I'm just gonna mask every single part of the background. Press Ctrl J to duplicate the layer, and we're just gonna repeat that step with the grass and dirt. So I'm gonna start out by shading the grass and just shade the edges like this, so it kind of blends in with the dirt. I think that looks pretty good. Now we're gonna shade the dirt. There we go. Now we just gotta shade the coffin. And I think this looks pretty good. Also, comment down below which thumbnail you think was the best. And if you can get me to 10,000 subscribers, I'm gonna make the best thumbnail tutorial on Gorilla Tag. So if you wanna become better at thumbnails, make sure to subscribe. Also, go watch my other video right here. Please click it, please. Yeah, right there. Please, just click it, please. Please.